One of the important overviews to say is that this is the year that South Africa reaches the point that in an individual's chart would be associated with the breakaway independence that happens somewhere around the age of typically 21, 22, culturally speaking. Well, that's where South Africa is right now and over the course of this year. This is the time when things will really change because of that. But it's certainly about making clear changes that assert its individuality. Like the changes are bigger than this government or this president, and as much as they might like to do those things, there is a greater flow of change happening that is shifting the politics of this country over the next 3 years that we are seeing very much the beginning of this year. The first quarter of the year sees some shift and change and shakiness around government itself. There could even be changes in cabinet. And it has mostly played out as the battle between Zuma and Gordhan, who share a birthday. And so that is also what is rumbling behind the scenes in this first part of the year. Therefore are changes both in cabinet and potentially, eventually, rising in the finance ministry itself. He's keeping a very behind the scenes kind of way of approaching things, and the changes are, as usual, more behind the scenes than in front of the scenes, but that will probably rise to a head in late February or March itself. Interestingly, there is an eclipse at that time that will actually be visible from South Africa. That is, given the fact that an eclipse is about a darkening, that change is not usually seen as necessarily very good for someone affected by that eclipse. Well, when we look at it astrologically, it's the President Jacob Zuma and the Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan again at each other as warriors, perhaps behind the scenes and certainly a bit in front of the scenes, and it is looking particularly challenging for the Minister of Finance, Pravin Gordhan. So although it does remain challenging for President Zuma until the end of February, it seems to be more so to the Minister of Finance, who is challenged as to whether he can survive the first half of the year. There is a solar eclipse, which you may very well have heard about, and which will be visible from South Africa, not in its totality. Astrologers always have seen eclipses as harbingers of doom for people in powerful positions. For most, that the eclipse is seen in Southern Africa is disconcerting, but the eclipse falls on a very sensitive position in South Africa's own financial chart, and we are at a critical condition. We do know that the movings and shakings behind the scenes in the Ministry of Finance and the presidency and the rest of the government are what we do have to be concerned about. Pravin Gordhan is possibly closer to losing his job than he has been in much of the astrological battle over the last 10 months. The problem is, as you know, eclipses are all about darkness. So what happens under eclipse is often not seen by everyone else until much later, kind of when it's too late. So whatever does happen between Minister Gordhan and the President, or whatever's happening in the presidency or the possible reshuffling of the cabinet, is all going to take a while before us ordinary South Africans know anything about it. But suffice it to say, this next week, at first from behind the scenes, has an instrumental influence on South Africa's future. It, in fact, is quite a changing week and will lead eventually to the announcement of the cabinet reshuffle and some changes in the finance ministry. I am not able to say that Brian Molefe will take Pravin's job. In fact, astrologically, it doesn't look like that. But certainly there are changes that will take a little while to filter through that will damage South Africa's financial situation. If we have to face any ratings agencies in the near future, that's not going to be promising at all, because at the very least we could get downgraded. March as well, that in March and certainly for the next 3 months we need to be a little concerned financially speaking here in South Africa. So hang on to your hats, hang on to your belts, hang on to the Minister of Finance if you possibly can, and hopefully we're going to make it through the next 3 months in one piece.